Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer. We talk about all things music. And today, we're going to be doing another ranking. This time we're going to be ranking the studio albums of a band I've loved since I was a preteen. Symphonic metal group Within Temptation. From the Netherlands, by the way. Now, I've been a fan of these guys since, like I said, when I was a preteen, when I started watching Harry Potter AMVs, and some of their songs were featured in those. And let's just say that because of that, their first 5 or so albums, I think, are pretty much staples of my childhood. And their 6th album, Hydra, was the first album I ever looked forward to the release day of. So, because I'm such a big fan, I figured it was time I did a ranking. So, let's get started with... This album was one of my biggest disappointments of 2019. Not because of the stylistic shift, but just because every song on here almost felt so underwhelming. Like, take the first 4 songs on here, for example. They all range from decent to pretty good, but there's a couple things that keep them from being great. Namely, that they all go for the exact same feel, and that feel has been done a million times over by other rock/metal bands such as Imagine Dragons. Yeah, this whole album kind of feels Imagine Dragons-y now that I've said that. Then there are some songs that are just plain duds, like Firelight, which is just boring, and Holy Ground, which has this quasi-rapped delivery that just sounds atrocious. That said, I will say that Mad World is a great song, even though it kind of steals its title from a Tears for Fears song, not gonna lie. There's only one Mad World, guys, and that's Tears for Fears. Anyway, Mercy Mirror and Endless War are also pretty good. But it's just a shame that most of this album feels utterly uninspired, because the talent is here, and Within Temptation would prove on their next album that they can make a good sort of quasi-nu metal album with elements of electronic music. They can do this sound well. They just didn't here. Anyway, let's move on. This is Within Temptation's first ever album. And man, does it sound like a different band. Like, it sounds less like symphonic metal or even like the new metal / electronic sound they would try on later albums, and more like a gothic / doom metal album. And this album also features Robert Westerholt doing some growled vocals, which... yeah, they did away with those on pretty much all of their later stuff. Some Within Temptation fans consider this to be their best album, but I do not agree. Like, sure, it's more metal, I guess, but it's also less catchy, less beautiful, and less Within Temptation-ish, to say the least. I mean, it's got some gems on it, don't get me wrong. Restless and Grace get stuck in my head from time to time, surprisingly, for how gloomy and dark they are. And Gatekeeper is delightfully dark with some of its lyrics. And Pearls of Light is just beautiful. However, while this album is good, it just doesn't resonate with me the way their later stuff does. That's partially for the reasons I just said, like it's not as beautiful, not as catchy. But it's also partially because my mom utterly ruined the song Candles for me by taking the line, "There's a candle burning in the womb." Literally. Yeah, I can't unhear that and it sounds painful. And I apologize to any women who happen to like this song who are watching this. Anyway, next. Hydra is an album where I appreciate what they were trying to do. Just throwing a bunch of different styles at a wall and seeing what sticks. And I'd argue most of it does stick. That said, not everything does. For example, The Whole World is Watching, featuring David Pirner of Soul Asylum, I think. Yeah, that one is honestly kind of boring. And then there's Edge of the World, which is an overproduced mess that just reminds me of the worst parts of Resist. That said, this album does have some great songs on it, such as the collaboration with Tarja, formerly of Nightwish, on the song Paradise What About Us. That song is absolutely beautiful. And then there's the underrated gems, Let Us Burn, Silver Moonlight, and Covered by Roses, which are all great as well. Yeah, this album is a bit inconsistent, but considering how many influences they were pulling from, this could have been a lot worse. Also, I know a lot of people like to hate on the song And We Run because of Exhibit's rap verse, but honestly, I think it was integrated into the sound pretty well. Just go into it with an open mind next time you listen to it. Who knows, maybe you'll like it more. Anyway, let's move on to the great albums, starting with... This is one of those albums that was definitely a staple of my childhood and is definitely a great album. That said, I'd say it's on the low end of great, mainly because of that annoying grunting on The Cross, and also the not very well integrated electronic elements on What Have You Done. Other than that, this is a great album full of hits. I absolutely love Hand of Sorrow, which is just a beautiful track. Our Solemn Hour, which has a great sing-along chorus. And then there's the extremely emotional, for me at least, 1-2 punch of The Truth Beneath the Rose and Forgiven. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. The Truth Beneath the Rose, isn't that emotional? Maybe not for you, but as someone who went through a rather embarrassing anti-SJW phase when I was younger, yeah, I kinda relate to the lyrics of this one. Enough about 12-year-old me's embarrassing political beliefs, though. Let's move on to... Yes, here it is. Within Temptation's attempt to sound like Evanescence. Don't get me wrong, this is a great album, but those of you who are calling Within Temptation sellouts now are about like 20 years behind schedule, I'd say. Because a lot of people called them sellouts when they released this right after Mother Earth. Anyway, this album is great. Songs like The Emotional, for me at least, It's the Fear, the eerily prophetic Forsaken, and the beautiful See Who I Am are just amazing. This album also contains the first Within Temptation song I ever heard, that being Memories, which is also a great song. Other great songs include the inspirational track Stand My Ground, the absolutely beautiful Angels, and the ever-catchy Jillian, I'd Give My Heart. Yeah, this album is just hit after hit. And speaking of albums that are just hit after hit,
she bleeds out, she walks in heaven's winter, the halo around her head is dazzling.
Yup, here's my hottest take of the video. Some of you are probably pretty surprised by this, considering I put Resist in last place and called it a disappointment, and this does have a similar sound. But you might have noticed, if you were paying attention, that I didn't say I hated Resist because of its sound. I hated it because it was underwhelming. This isn't underwhelming. Like, this is how you do this sound right. The song structures, while still full of nu metal riffs and electronic elements, are significantly more creative and varied. The band actually sounds like they're trying, and for those of you who wanted them to sound metal, yeah, this is for you. This is probably heavier than even some of their early stuff. Also, can I just say that Sharon, their singer, sounds phenomenal here? Like, she always sounds great, don't get me wrong, but on this album specifically, and especially on songs like the title track, she just sounds amazing. And then there's also some really great riffs on songs like Worth Dying for example. Also, this album has a lot of songs that I relate to, such as The Purge, which is about purging your past traumas and past mistakes and becoming a better person. And also Shed My Skin, which is about the same thing. As someone with a trauma disorder, these songs just speak to me. I wasn't expecting to like an album with this sound this much, especially not over The Heart of Everything and The Silent Force, but here we are. Now that we've gotten past the 8 out of 10s, let's move on to the 9s, starting with... A lot of Within Temptation fans would probably put this at number 1, and I can see why. It's got a beautiful symphonic metal sound, and it even has some folk metal elements mixed in on songs like the gorgeous Mother Earth, Never-Ending Story, and Imperfect Harmony. All 3 of which sound like the soundtrack to some nature-worshipping ritual, which, as someone who grew up with a Wiccan mom, I can definitely appreciate. It also has some of the best vocal performances from Sharon I've heard in a while. I've heard ever, actually. Especially on songs like Dark Wings, Deceiver of Fools, and especially Caged. There's other great songs include the heartbreaking Our Farewell, and the beautiful wintry song Ice Queen. This album isn't quite my favorite, if only because The Promise drags on a little too long and gets kind of boring by the end. But it is very close. As for what topped it, though, you know how nowadays everyone says this is one of Within Temptation's best albums? Yeah. I was there when people were calling this their sellout album. Like, I remember people back then were saying, oh, it's too pop. Well, I'm proud to say that my 12-year-old self was ahead of the curve. Because even back then, this was my favorite Within Temptation album. Something about its theme of people doing bad things, not because they were bad people, but because they were desperate, really spoke to me back then as someone who was just developing a sense of right and wrong outside of what I was taught by my parents. Even now, I absolutely love the concept of this album. For those of you who don't know, this is about a woman named Mother Maiden who raises an army of ghosts, basically, to get revenge on people who have done wrong, and in doing so, she becomes just as bad as the people she's going after. So, yeah, that's actually a really relatable concept to me as someone who spent a good chunk of my school years getting mad at teachers because I thought they were enforcing rules that weren't necessary. Meanwhile, I was behaving just as badly as I thought they were. So yeah, this album is relatable. As for the actual music, yeah, it's a bit poppier, but I'd argue that makes it catchier. Plus, it's not like the symphonic metal elements are completely gone yet. It still has quite a bit of beauty and intensity to it, and this album is a perfect balance between Within Temptation's old sound and their new sound, and it's damn near a perfect album. Will they ever top this? I don't know, but we'll find out in the coming years, I guess. Anyway, that's my video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.